Hello and welcome to the reading from Agastya Valipadu. Today we are going to read about a very interesting topic from the book Agastya, Purpose of Life. The topic that we're going to talk about today is black magic, but it is not in the way that all of us perceive it. It's in the way that Agastya explains it. So let us begin. Appa says, black magic is a form of energy that is used for wrong purposes. The ultimate source of the energy is thought. A thought has its effect depending on two factors: intensity of thought of the person who employs it, the strength and weakness of the person against whom it is used. So now, what happened was I underwent an experience with black magic, what was worked against me. And Appa Agastya helped remove it. Well, maybe one day I'll share that, but the details are there in the book, Agastya's Disciple. But I asked the question about black magic to Appa, and this is what he says. He says it is a form of energy that is used for wrong purposes. So we already know that everything in this created world is energy, different levels of energy, different types of energy, and how we use it and how we understand it. Now he says, black magic is a form of energy that is used for wrong purposes, that much we know. But he says the source is actually the thought. So far, we have all understood that black magic is basically performed using things. We have seen these in movies. People put things in, pins on dolls or something like that. But truly, Appa's pointing out the source is thought. So he's going to the very root of the source of how energy affects another person. So he says there are two things that are important. One is the intensity of the thought of the person who employs it. So, all of us have thoughts, right? And we all have sometimes bad thoughts. We are angry about somebody. However, it affects only if the intensity is really high. And he goes on to explain the entire process of thought in this. So let's continue. And then he also says, how it affects another person depends on the strength and weakness of the person. So let's continue. Thought is immensely powerful. Where do thoughts arise? Thought is a form of energy available in the cosmos, just like light. So throughout Balipadu, Appa has talked about energy. He's talked about how everything, even knowledge, every bit of knowledge that we today understand is already present in the cosmos. And he says, thought is also a form of energy that is present around us, just like light. The only difference is we can see the light through our senses. We cannot see thought unless you're a clairvoyant, and which is what our brother Ramachandran here, who is a pranic healer, will understand that. And then, where do thoughts arise? Thought is a form of energy available in the cosmos, just like light. The mind is the vehicle of thought. Thoughts arise constantly in people. They are like small ripples within the ocean. Or they can be like a spring or volcano, depending on the intensity of the moment. So let us look at our own thoughts. Thoughts, we are constantly thinking. And what happens? If you, as soon as you wake up, you begin the thought process. It is, oh, I have to do this, I have to do this. You're thinking about what you need to do. Then during the course of the day, the people we encounter, the things that happen to us, they all evoke thought processes. Because the way we act and react is based on our thoughts. So thought is, basically, it becomes a very important factor in each person's life in expressing and experiencing things, right? So he says, the mind is the vehicle of thought. So we have talked about mind and the difference between the brain, the mind, and the consciousness, if you go back to the previous sessions. So mind is what we as spiritual aspirants are trying to conquer. Because as long as the mind works, And we talked about this in the one of the sessions where we talked about how children begin to learn through the parents, through the environment, through the experiences, to apply mind, good, bad, how we judge people. Everything is because of the mind. So who is a Paramahamsa? Appa talks about it. A Paramahamsa is one who, when you scold him or when you praise him, his response is only one. He only smiles like a child. Because a Paramahamsa is one who has conquered the mind. So then he says, thoughts arise constantly in people. Yeah, we know that. So, but how are they? What are the intensities? So most of us, the thoughts are like small ripples, they keep coming and going, coming and going. They surface and they recede. But then there are some like a spring or volcano, depending on the intensity of the moment. So what is this intensity of the moment? When a thought encounters or is fed with emotion, then it becomes intense. That is how anger sparks violence. That is how the thoughts of anger or frustration make us do things that are not good. So that is why in a spiritual aspirant, calmness is very, very important. Agastya says in one of the discourses, be like the mud. Somebody throws a rock, let it sink in, let it not disturb you. Also, how do we feed thoughts? Think about it. We feed or strengthen a thought by constant repetition of our thoughts about the same thing. So we are angry about somebody, we keep talking or thinking about them, we are intensifying the thought. That is when it becomes like a volcano ready to burst. That is when fights happen. So it is in our power to understand this very important lesson Appa is teaching us here. He's saying, in the beginning stages, let thoughts be like ripples. Let them come and go. Let them come and go. Do not feed them. Do not make them into a volcano, especially if they are thoughts which will affect others adversely. So then he continues. Thoughts are dormant in the subconscious mind. So, yep, all of us have thoughts and they're dormant. Very few know that they have inherited strong thoughts from previous lives. And that is what he's talking about right now. That is why an apparently gentle person sometimes commits heinous crimes that cannot be explained. Now, what a beautiful revelation this is. He says, thoughts are dormant in the subconscious mind. We are also, thoughts are around us and we are, reacting to things based on our own thoughts. But where are some of these thoughts coming from? They're not only from the present life and the present experiences, they are strong thoughts that we bring from our previous lives. That is why an apparently gentle person sometimes commits heinous crimes that cannot be explained. So, we have seen those instances where we are like, oh my God, such a gentle person, how did this happen? Because the seed of that strong, violent, or angry thought was within him already. He brought it and he was not able to conquer it. So what are we dealing with? We are dealing with thoughts not only of the present life, with what we encounter, the thoughts that arise within us, but also strong thoughts from previous lives. So thoughts are within and without. We share a mental body that draws thoughts from outside and supplies it to the human mind. This is very important. We share a mental body that draws thoughts from outside and supplies it to the human mind. So thought is also like the juice obtained from the fruit called knowledge. So thought can be of two things. One is it is within and it is around us. It is how do we connect to thoughts from around us? Because we all are connected through a mental body. On the mental plane, there is no separate Anu, there is no separate Ramachandran or Veena or Praveen or Manchit. It's all of us are connected. And if we can understand this, then it becomes very important to understand what thoughts we allow within ourselves. So when we talk about association or satsanga, satsanga is not just sitting in a place and reading and or listening to a discourse and singing bhajans. Satsang, or the company of the good, is the company of the thoughts you keep, the company of the people around you. That is why, the great ones always say, associate with people who are good, associate with people who have good purpose in life. Those good things will influence you. And that is why when you meditate in a group, it is much, much stronger, because everybody's thoughts is focused on one thing. That is why places of worship are like that. They're powerful because already it is consecrated in a sacred place, if you have like an idol or something. But it is also everybody who's going there, at least in the olden times, and now most of the time, people are intent on one thing and one thing alone. It's worship, devotion. So that is strong. And we've talked about this. We've talked about how each environment or each area has its own type of thought energy. So be careful where you go until you become strong. Be careful where you go or who you associate with. Then he says, thought is also like the juice obtained from the fruit called knowledge. So what is he talking about? He's talking about us or spiritual aspirants who read or we hear a discourse and we understand and we assimilate. When knowledge is assimilated, it's the juice of knowledge. Then he continues. During sleep, thoughts are awakened or released. People see different things happen in their dreams. How interesting is this? We all have dreams and we wonder, I didn't even know this person. Why am I seeing this unfamiliar face in my dream? Why am I experiencing these things in my dream? Why am I going through all this in my dream? Why is this disgusting thing coming in my dream? Why is this beautiful, sublime thing coming in my dream? The source is thought. So what kind of thoughts? Thoughts that are from a past lives as a past thought, which are in a subconscious mind and that might arise. Thoughts of a current life, of our experiences and what we have fed our own energy into. Thoughts of the people around us. And this, I have experienced it. When you are very close to a person and you're in proximity with a person, their thoughts influence your dreams. And then you're like, my goodness, why did I dream this? And you know why. Because it's not your thoughts, their thoughts. Especially this happens for your father and mother, children, siblings, husband, wife, this kind of relationships. Okay. And be careful who you have as roommates or, people in the family. That's why Appa says, and it is not wrong, Appa says, karmically, people with a lot of bad karma are constantly emitting, karmic energy, negative karmic energy. And in such cases, that is going to affect the people in the family. And if it is possible and for the welfare of the rest of the family, that intensely karmic persons can be kept away from the family. And that's not wrong. Anyway, we'll continue with that when we come to that situation in one of the discourses. So Appa says, so we talked about how thoughts arise from within us, from a past life, from the current life and people around us, but there are also other thoughts. We have thoughts from higher planes, thought energy of higher minds. And that is what we experience when many of us, all of us do travel astrally. We do not remember those astral travels. And some of the most sublime experiences of seeing something beautiful, a pilgrimage or a place of worship or a beautiful energy that you feel and you bring back to your current life or your waking consciousness in human terms is impressions of your astral travels. And many of you who are spiritually advanced have experienced this. So these are all the different ways that we dream. So nothing is new. The mind is getting all these different impressions from different places, and like a kaleidoscope, sometimes makes sense, sometimes doesn't make sense, depending on how much of control you have. So for example, your astral travel will have more meaning than would be your thoughts that you've got from other people. Thoughts that you dreams that arise because of your thoughts and your current life situation and your past life situation will have more meaning than thoughts that just get connected to us during a dream state. So isn't this beautiful? I mean, I was reading or working on the translation of this particular subject by Srimati Vanaja Kulkarni, who has been helping me with the Kannada translation of Agastya Vadipadu, and I was blown away. I mean, I have read this how many times in the last 3 years as I've worked on Vadipadu. But as Appa says, everything in Vadipadu is like an ever new spring. The more and more and more you read it, the more and more and more you understand. You could have read the book, put it aside, then you come back and read it. It's still fresh. It is still new. It's like an ever new spring. It does not go stale. I've had a lot of people talk about Vadipadu and say, my God, I have read this book 7 times and I still do not feel like it is boring. It is not. It's a living book. And I repeat this over and over again. There's a lot of knowledge contained in the discourses Appa has given in Vadipadu. Think about this. We started off on the topic of black magic, and Appa goes to the very source. He goes to thought, which is the very source of everything. So anyway, we'll continue with this. Now, at this juncture, I would like to add, I have had some good astral travels where I've seen some nice things. But 2 weeks ago, I was exposed or given the experience of a plane of consciousness where there are violent people. It's called Rasatala. If you have seen some of the previous episodes of our Agastya Vadipadu, we have talked about how there are 14 planes of consciousness, depending on the kind of nature of the person and the thought and the level of consciousness. And below Bhuloka, that is the earth plane, the conscious plane, we have 7 planes which are of different bad negative energies. The worst one is Patala Loka, which is where we have black magicians and truly evil people. And their consciousness in that level, it doesn't mean that those people are existing. It just means their thought plane is in that level. So lokas are not planes that exist, but those are planes of consciousness, that the levels of energy. So we got to remember that. Those are not like actual places. And then above that is Rasatala. And Rasatala is a place where you have people who are violent in nature. They don't know the difference between right and wrong. And I was exposed to that particular place just for a few seconds. And I tell you, the intensity of the negativity of the people, and those people didn't look like demons. They didn't look like demons or, ugly, nothing. They were ordinary people like us. But the anger, that energy of violence that they were emitting was so strong. In that place, I was aware of chanting Appa's name, aware of chanting a guru's name, Lahiri Masha's name, because that comes to me very easily. Lahiri Masha has been very, very helpful to me in all my life. He's just constantly given me boons. And I remember chanting that. No, so be careful who you associate with. You do not want as spiritual aspirants to ever experience these things. So be careful what you see. I was going through beautiful, videos. Sometimes I do. I was watching, babies and children and enjoying their innocence. And suddenly something very ugly popped up. And I was shocked. And then I realized the social media of today is a way you can be exposed to these things even if you don't want to. So be very careful. Please be very careful what you let into your sense telephones. The movies we see today, all those scenes that we're not supposed to see, do not need to see, which are not even relevant to the movie, are shown. Most of the current movies in America are dystopian. They are more about physical violence. They're more about grossness. We as a society need to change if the world needs to improve, because this is a very bad trend. So anyway, so we were talking about thoughts. We'll go back to that. Sorry, I digressed. Now let me explain, says Appa, how thoughts are expressed. Okay, and before that, I missed a paragraph. He says, during sleep, thoughts are awakened or released. People see different things happen in their dreams. A psychologist would interpret these as the expression of the deeper mind or the subconscious mind. So here he's telling us in a very simple way that science is only true to some extent. There are a lot more higher truths that are not known to science, which we have just discussed about thoughts. Then Appa continues, up to this, I've explained what is thought and from where it arises. Now, let me explain how thoughts are expressed. I have compared thoughts to ripples. When the ripples are strong, they rise up to the surface and develop into waves. The size and force of the waves are influenced by factors like the wind and the moon. So, what is he talking about? He's talking about how thoughts arise, right? So, when they are strong, they rise up to the surface and they become like waves. They become strong in their intensities. They keep recurring. That is why when you are angry with somebody, when you've gone through some very bad situation, that keeps recurring in your mind over and over again. That is the waves of thought. But what are these wind and moon that he's talking about? What is it that influences these thoughts? So these are based on the situation, the people around us who feed into the thought. Think about it. Something happens to you, you discuss it with somebody else. How does this person react to you? Do they help you, nullify the thought or reduce it, calm you down, or do they feed fuel into fire? And unfortunately, in the modern world, we see a lot of that. People who will agree with you and feed more fuel. So sometimes it's best, if you need to vent, if you need to talk to somebody, who will not be judgmental, who will listen to you and will try to calm you down. But if you know that there's a person who's a gossip or who enjoys this kind of things, don't share these things with them. As much as possible, talk to God, talk to your guru, express these things to them. They'll help you. They do help you. It's you just have to have that conversation within yourself. Then he says, similarly, like how thoughts are influenced by factors like wind and moon. Similarly, thoughts present within the mind generally develop and subside. This is not expressed or put into action. We know that most of the time some thought comes in and we let it subside. We are able to let it go, and we don't put it into action. When a person starts meditating and contemplating in a quiet place, he becomes aware of these thoughts because these thoughts have not gone away. So they're already within us, and they remain in a dormant way, like Appa's talked about. So when a person starts meditating and contemplating in a quiet place, he becomes aware of these thoughts. So we have understood now, we have thoughts in the waking consciousness, in a waking state. We have thoughts when we dream, and now we are talking about thoughts when we meditate. So when we are meditating, thoughts start arising within us. The thoughts of the present and past, and sometimes even the past life, rise up, and the person is able to remember them. So thoughts begin to rise and we begin to remember. And sometimes we understand that a thought is of a past life. And if we are spiritually advanced, we understand that was real. I have gone through a past life regression, and I tell you, it's a very confusing situation, because I went into the past life. I was taken through it by somebody called Chandrasekhar in Mysore, who's an amazingly spiritual person. And I come back, and in that past life regression, I saw myself in one of the past lives, sitting in front of a funeral pyre and weeping because my husband had just died. And when I came back to the present life and he woke me up from the past life regression, I sat up and I had the dupatta in my hand, and I was holding it on my thing from eyes, and I was weeping, sobbing. My husband is dead. My husband is dead. And I knew I was in the present life. But that impression of the past life was so strong. For 3 days, I lived in a kind of a confused state because I knew that was me and I knew this was me. So, yeah. So, thoughts from previous life do continue with you if you allow them to be strong in your present life, then they become strong, thoughts of the future life. So, be careful what kind of thoughts you have. So then Appa says, when the thoughts arise and they're allowed to go, the person feels light. So that is one of the first things that as meditators or spiritual aspirants we must do. Let go of these thoughts. When thoughts come, understand, become aware, let them go. Very important. This is how the process of meditation helps remove thoughts from the person meditating. So meditating is not just about sitting and focusing on God and getting somewhere. It is also something that will help us divest ourselves of the mental baggage we are carrying. Very important. Remember this. Spiritual life is not just about how we live, how we speak, how we act. It's not about just the satsang or the sadhana or the practice of the techniques of meditation. It is a whole process of unlearning. For one who wants to go to the ultimate, the liberation level of liberation, this liberation from this whole tangled web we are in, it's a matter of unlearning, not learning. So remember that. It's a very important thing that Appa's taught us. So this topic does continue, but we're going to stop for now because there's a whole bunch of beautiful information he has given, and we will not give justice to it if we continue. We'll continue again on the same topic next week.